Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome back to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Well, I am your running host, Dean Thompson, coming to you straight from the Upward Sports Studio. Have you ever said something you wish you could take back? Of course, we all have. And we're going to share a story about that topic today. And then I'm going to share my thoughts on why we're often not motivated to take care of ourselves. And joining me once again is Run for God founder, Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Man, it's getting to be racing season.
It is.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, and we got a half marathon coming up.
Sure.
And so I guess I'm going to race a half marathon out in Wynne, Arkansas.
In Arkansas, yeah.
Yeah. I've never run in Arkansas before, I don't think.
I don't think I've ever been to Arkansas. No, I have. I've been to, wait a minute, Texarkana. Is that in Arkansas or Texas? It splits the border, doesn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, it'll be fun.
Hey, so I want to hit this on the front of the podcast this time. So I've had an incredible time talking to coaches, potential coaches, past coaches of the Run for God programs. Actually, I had one the other night. I put a 9 o'clock slot out there, a 9 p.m. slot, and I had, I think, 12 people on there.
Wow.
And it's just incredible to get to really talk about what's about to launch. I know it feels like we've been talking about this forever, but we're on the precipice of this right now. It's about to launch. I think we're probably 35% to my goal on 100 churches. I'm asking the question at the end of every one of these meetings. I'm saying, okay, raise your hand if you're with us the first part of next year on starting a 5K challenge. And so I think I'm about 35% to my goal. So that means I've got 65% to go.
Man.
So I know there's many of you out there who you've heard me say this every week, and you've been like, I'll do it next week. Or I just don't know. I've had a lot of people email me and say, I'm on the fence. This is way outside my comfort zone. That's exactly where God wants you.
Amen.
That's exactly where we want you. We want this to be outside your comfort zone. So if that's you, and you haven't emailed customer service at runforgod.com yet and said, hey, I want to talk to Mitchell, do that right now. Turn this podcast off, go to your email app, and send an email to customer service at runforgod.com and say, I want to talk to Mitchell. I'll reach out to you. We'll set up a time. There'll be a few of us on there. Probably won't do 10 or 12 again. That was probably a little too many people. But 3 or 4 at a time, and we'll just talk about what it is, how it's going to work. I'm going to answer all your questions. If I don't have the answer, I'll get the answer and come back to you. But I think I've got most of them covered at this point. I've talked to enough people. So we want you to join us in coaching the 5K challenge this January the 13th. And if that's you, I want to talk to you now. So turn this podcast off. Go send me an email.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're running right now and you don't have the means to, then set yourself a reminder.
Yeah. Hey, Siri, remind me to email Mitchell when I get done running.
That's right. Yep.
You think their phone will hear that when I say it? I don't know how that works.
I don't know. Well, did you know that today is a holiday? We're
as we're recording this, or when this is releasing?
We're recording this on September the 19th.
Okay.
And today, September the 19th, is a holiday. You didn't know, did you?
I knew yesterday was National Cheeseburger Day, but
this one's way more important than that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know it's hard to believe there could be something more important than National Cheeseburger today. But today is Talk Like a Pirate Day. So
we need to say arr.
Arr.
I think they have a holiday for everyone. We've talked about having a National Run for God Upward Running Day.
Yeah, we
haven't done that yet. We need to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
maybe the official launch date of the new app could be the National Upward Running Day.
I like it.
Let's see what the powers to be say about that.
Let's make that happen. We had a post of the week from Mike Powers this week. He said, I went for a run this afternoon, and it is still wet from all the rain we have had. I was listening to my music and enjoying my run when I almost stepped on a big copperhead snake. These snakes are venomous. I am not sure, but I think my spirit may have temporarily left my body. I didn't see it at first because it was laying in the wet leaves and among the fallen branches on the path. Luckily, its head was sticking up, and I saw it at the last second. After I saw the head, I saw the rest of the body, and it was big, but camouflaged among the leaves and branches on the trail. Unfortunately, this is an out and back, and I knew I was going to have to pass it again. I ran really slow, but I didn't see it, which only added to the tension. I guess it slithered by after I almost landed on it. I actually ran 4 miles, but a little after this event, I accidentally stopped my watch and had to start it back again. So, my run was separated into 2 separate Garmin activities. I think Indiana Jones and I have the same feelings about snakes.
Have you ever almost stepped on a snake?
Oh, man, yes. I've done the exact same thing he's talking about, where you don't notice it until you're 5 feet from it. And I remember one time I almost stepped on one, and it felt like God was carrying me across.
I was going to say, I've had the same thing. It's like the gravity says you should have stepped on that snake, but somehow you found an extra 4 feet in that stride midair because you didn't see it till you were in the air.
Yeah.
And then you just like floated across it. How does that happen?
I don't know, but I've done the same thing. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. When I think about snakes, I can't help but think about a time when I was at Dalton State. And I took the Dalton State girls out to the Pinhoti Trail. We were going to run on the Pinhoti Trail. I'd never been on it before, and I thought, well, we're going to check it out and see if it's a good place to run.
It's a snake den up there.
But we did come across this one spot, and there was just a big king snake, but it was probably 6 feet long, and it was stretched completely, just in a straight line all the way across the path. And, of course, I just jumped over it. And I looked behind, I said, just jump over it. Well, there were several of them that were like, nope, not doing that, not doing that. But, I reached around and I got a big long stick and poked it and got it out of the way. Don't think that I'm a big tough guy, because I am scared of snakes. I'm not scared of a lot, but I'm scared.
Will you
of snakes.
pick up a snake?
No. Well, I say that. You know what happened one time? This is a weird story about snakes. I don't know. We're getting off into the snake thing, but 2:00 in the morning one time, Debbie comes over and she wakes me up. And she's standing next to the bed and she goes, honey, we have a snake in the bathroom. And there was about a 3 or 4 foot snake, another king snake, in the bathroom. And I was like, well, my motivation is I want to get back to sleep.
Yeah.
And so I woke up, I went and got some gloves, and I grabbed that snake.
Because gloves are going to help if it bites.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. But I got some gloves, and I got this snake, and I took it out back, and I threw it over, because it was a king snake. I didn't want to kill it, so I threw it over the fence in our backyard. But, yeah, I've had a number of snake encounters. The one thing, do you know anybody that's ever gotten bitten by a copperhead?
No.
Because I don't either. And one day we were working in the yard.
I know somebody's got bit by a rattlesnake, but not a copperhead.
I do too. But Debbie was working around, and there was like monkey grass. You know how it kind of, it's got kind of a sheltery place there. Well, she was working around that spot a lot, pulling weeds and stuff. And she realized all of a sudden after she had already put her hands around there several times, that there was a copperhead underneath that grass, and it never struck her. And it made me think, I don't know anybody who's ever gotten bitten by a copperhead. I've been around a few of them, and I've never seen one strike at me. I've had rattlesnakes strike at me, but they must be fairly docile compared with other venomous snakes.
I'm not going to test it.
I'm not either, but it's just an observation. So
sure.
Anyway, snakes on the trails. Hey, listen, don't let the potential for snakes on the trail stop you from going out and running.
Just keep your eyes open.
Just keep your eyes open and realize they don't want to have anything to do with you, just like you don't want to have anything to do with them. And if you'll stay away from them, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our trivia question from last week, this was great. Kind of a discussion question. Make your case for which president of the United States would have had the fastest 5K time. Tell me who you think would be fastest and why. Now, there's no right or wrong to this, right? And I haven't gotten the answers back before we record this, so I wish I would have gotten the answers back so I could share it. Mm-hmm. But maybe we'll do that on another podcast. But I got to thinking about this, right? So here's my thoughts. My first thought is that Barack Obama looks like a runner, and so you think maybe he could do it, but then he seems more of an 800-meter guy, like he would be better at a shorter distance. And plus, he smokes like a chimney. So I felt let's take him off the list. Then I thought Gerald Ford, he's widely considered to be maybe the best athlete to ever be president. He had a college football career. I think he was at University of Michigan. Is that right? But by the time he took office, he didn't look like he was in that good a shape. And football players don't necessarily translate to good 5K runners. Mm-hmm. So I took him off the list. And then Jimmy Carter was actually a cross-country runner in high school and maybe college. Some people have said he was and some not. I'm not sure. But he was definitely a runner. And there's some rumors that he ran under 11 minutes for a 2-mile one time. But then I found out where he did it. It was kind of an estimated 2 miles. And, you can't put any trust in an estimated 2 miles. Plus, I actually ran with Jimmy Carter near Emory University years ago, and he wasn't very fast. And so I'm taking him off the list. So then, of course, Clinton was a famous runner. I mean, famously.
My brother used to run with Clinton.
Is that
quite
right?
often, yeah.
Well, I feel like he likes cheeseburgers too much to be.
Well, Drum said he was pretty fast.
Yeah.
He Drum was Drum was stationed on General's Row up in Arlington in the Honor Guard, and that's where Clinton ran. And I mean, I think it was a couple of times a week he ran with Clinton. And the crazy thing about it was, because Drum always said, he said the first time, because this is when they were, you remember when they were throwing things over the White House fence and, there was all kinds of problems. So he couldn't run on the ground. So he ran at General's Row. And Drum said they were out running one day and all these Suburbans pulled up and out jumps Bill Clinton. He said, you care if I run with you guys? And they're like, no. Well, the Secret Service kind of had a sit down, like a meeting with them.
Here's what you can and can't do.
Right. And they said, anytime you're within 10 feet of the president, there's a gun aimed at your head. I told Drew, I was like, I'd hate to trip and fall into him or whatever. But he said there were snipers all over those General Row houses. And
wow.
Sounds like we may need that same kind of protection back. But,
it does.
But yeah, I thought, well, go ahead. You finish what you think.
Yeah. So here's
okay.
This is my whole line of thinking.
Okay.
Okay. So George H.W. Bush was a great athlete, right? Yeah. He played baseball at Yale. And so but he was a first baseman.
Yeah.
First baseman, notoriously not runners or not very good at running. So, and of course, if it was down to who's the toughest, then Teddy Roosevelt would win, but obviously he doesn't have a 5K body.
Right.
So he's probably not a good 5K. Then I looked at Calvin Coolidge. I felt like, okay, now we're getting warmer because Calvin Coolidge, nice, tall, thin guy, kind of looks like a runner. He probably could have run a good 5K. And then I thought about Abe Lincoln, obviously long and thin also. But I think he seems more he had some health problems too. But he also.
But do you think running was even a thing back then?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
But maybe him and Obama could have had a good 800-meter duel, though. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So that gets us down to two guys. Okay. These are the two that I think they're coming down, and they're battling down the last half mile of the 5K. And I think it's James Madison, who is a small dude, just looked like a Kenyan, kind of a small guy that looked like he probably could run. And George W. Bush, who, He's an athlete. He stays active. He's got a bike ride that he does every year.
He does 100-mile rides.
That's right.
Bike rides. Yeah.
Right. So, and the one thing about James Madison too, I forgot to mention is he's very smart, and runners notoriously smart people, right? So I feel like he's probably a good runner. And then George W. Bush is also a fidgety guy. And a lot of good runners are fidgety. So I thought, well, he's probably good. So I think it comes down to James Madison and George W. Bush entering the last straightaway. And I think Bush has the better kick because of his baseball background. So Bush wins by 2 seconds, 1851. And he does it despite the fact that his father was a first baseman.
So I didn't do all the research you did. I just said George W. Bush, because he does the mountain biking. I mean, he stays really fit, it looks like. So that was my pick.
Well, there you go.
I didn't do all the research you did.
Yeah. And imagine this, okay?
So maybe he'll reach out to us and let us know what his most recent 5K time was.
Yeah, maybe so.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Imagine this. While we have this race, we have this imaginary race. Well, imagine that Donald Trump is the one commentating on the race.
It's going to be huge.
Love him or hate him, you know that would be entertaining.
It would be very entertaining. Yeah.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org. That's upward.org.
All right, we're back. And listen, we're not getting as much participation in Thursday night as we used to. And maybe it's because we really have stopped mentioning it on this podcast.
Yeah.
And so don't forget about Thursday nights at 9 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We have there's always some kind of a topic. Recently we talked about vitamins. Well, what do vitamins have to do with our running? And so we talk about all sorts of things. Sometimes it's a Bible study. It's really cool stuff sometimes. So tune in on Thursday night. I know a lot of people go back and they watch it later because I see that. But
so with the new app, you're actually going to get a push notification to your phone
when it happens,
leading up to it. Yeah, I don't know for exactly what time we're going to push that notification out, but it'll be a reminder. Hey, tune in on the app for Thursday Night Live's about to start. So that'll be a good reminder. Because you're right. I mean, everybody gets busy and
sure,
so
that's the way it is for me.
Yeah,
I got a phone call this morning, an embarrassing phone call this morning. My daughter-in-law called me at 6:30 this morning. I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on that she would call me at 6:30 in the morning?
You're supposed to take somebody somewhere.
My granddaughter had it was called Gravy with Grandparents.
Yeah.
And so she was calling me to see because she was telling me not to come. Well, I wasn't on my way.
Like, I was just about to walk out the door.
No, I told her, I said, I'm so embarrassed. I feel so bad. I forgot about it. And anyway, it turned out good. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, Strava is a pretty cool thing. And they have these things called Strava segments. So you know what?
I've been
Strava
accused
segments.
of cheating on
That's
it before.
True.
That's right.
That's right. And of course, the Strava segment, they're kind of special stretches where runners or cyclists or, there's a challenging hill or a particular spot where a lot of people run, and it just kind of records who the fastest people are and that kind of thing. And it's a neat thing because it's kind of, and some people love the Strava segment stuff, and some people will use Strava segments to find where the popular running places are because they'll see where everybody's recording these things. And so it's pretty cool. But there are some crazy segments, Strava segments out there. And I was reading this story about in the Denver airport, it's called Gate Change NAR is the name of the segment. And it's basically from one gate to another. And it's like a 500-foot sprint. And more than 500 people have done this Strava segment.
Really?
So people are doing it in their clothes. Somebody looks and they see, look, there's a segment right here. Let's do it. I just think that's hilarious. And anyway, there's a lot of others too. There's one at the Panathinaike Stadium. I'm not sure how to say that. But it's the 1896 Olympic running track. Once you get entry into that stadium, there's actually a Strava segment inside the stadium. You can also, there's one at Stonehenge. where you run around the famous stone circle. Alcatraz has one. It's called Prisoner's Run. There's one on Robben Island in Cape Town where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. Now there's a 10K race now that actually takes place there. And if you look really, really close on the Strava's global heat map feature, you can find these Strava segments in these routes that look like they're in the middle of the ocean. It's like, what in the world is that? And it's guys getting their runs in while they're working on an oil rig.
Wow.
That's a pretty cool thing. So Strava segments. It'd be fun to do some of those, wouldn't it?
So kind of speaking of this, let me stop just a minute and give a shout out to a lady that we know, Lorilyn Hicks. Have you been following what she's been doing?
I saw a little bit of it, yeah.
So Lorilyn, Michael Hicks, who's one of our good friends, they actually got married under the Run for God finish line arch. I don't know if you remember that. But Lorilyn, her and Michael are just like, they're endurance junkies. Yes. I mean, if you look endurance junkies up in the dictionary, you've got their pictures.
That's right.
They met on an Ironman forum. That's how they met. They got married. Well, Lorilyn decided she was going to do a Deca Ironman, which if you remember the very first Run for God 5K Challenge book, we had a chapter in there about Gary Brasher. He was one of the first to do the Deca Ironman. And so Lorilyn was going to do a Deca Ironman. So let me lay this out, what this means. Yeah. This isn't 10 marathons in 10 days or 20 days. An Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run, a marathon. A Deca Ironman is a 230
a 24
mile swim. You got to get it right in your head. And then a 1,120 mile bike, and then 260 miles on the run.
Yeah.
And she made it all the way to just over 100 miles on the run. So she did all the swim, and this is all consecutively.
Yeah.
All the swim. She did all the bike, and then she made it to a little over 100 miles on the run, and she just couldn't walk. Yeah. I mean, I was watching the videos of her, and it was just painful looking, but hats off to her. Amen. I mean, that is a feat that I think there's only 11 or 17 women in the world who have ever completed that.
Is that right?
And she came, I mean, you say she only made 4 marathons in, but she made 4 marathons in. I mean, that's over 100 miles she made. So
that's impressive.
Kudos to her. It was really neat to watch. I called Michael because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And she was in the middle of the bike, and I called him and I said, "What in the world is your wife doing?" I just heard somebody told me about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, we're up here in Wisconsin," and hats off to her. Congratulations, Lorilyn. I mean, you did more than 99.999% of the people in this world have done. So good job.
Amen. Nice job. Well, have you ever said something that you wish you could take back?
I've never done that, Dean. I don't.
This was another one from Rhonda Williams, and it's called "I Can't Believe I Said That." I parallel parked my car across the street from the hair salon. I was careful to turn on the parking brake because I was on a hill, cracked the windows to help dissipate heat, and placed the dash saver across the windshield to protect the dash from the effects of the hot summer sun. I checked for traffic before opening the door. There was a car turning onto the street, but she was a ways back and had plenty of room on the very wide street, so I got out of my car and then waited for her to pass by. Apparently, the other driver disagreed with me exiting my car before she passed, and she blew her horn and shouted as she sped past me. I couldn't hear what she yelled because her windows were up. However, her red, angry face conveyed the message. Then I heard it. I heard the B word come out of my mouth. I gasped, and I quickly put my hand to my mouth, but it was too late. It was out there. Did I really just say that? I looked around to see if anyone might have heard me, but thankfully didn't see anyone. I know the driver didn't hear me. She was driving too fast and probably uttering her own expletives. So I was alone, thank goodness. I was relieved that no one had heard me utter that word. No one, that is, except God. I was shocked and ashamed and asked for forgiveness. If only I had been as careful to protect my witness as I had been to protect my car. I hadn't chosen to curse. It was a reflex, but it made me realize I needed to train my brain to respond in a more tolerant and forgiving way. Once upon a time, I worked in an environment where cursing was the norm, so I got used to it and even participated in it to fit in. Without realizing it, I was training my brain that cursing was normal speech, and that's why it came out on that day, even though I had kicked the foul language habit years ago. God did not call us to fit into our culture. He called us to be separate from it. We are to be a light in the darkness so others may come to know Him. He told us to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, Matthew 5:44. People notice when we return rudeness with respect and cruelty with kindness. They will see a peace and love within us that they don't possess, and they will want it. So my goal is to work hard to retrain my brain so the next time my reflexive response will be different. I will pray that God will help me become more like Christ with each passing day. So hopefully next time I will hear, "God bless you," come out of my mouth.
I like the transparency of Rhonda's story there.
I do too. But it's a toe stomping, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we've all done it.
Yeah, I mean, I just did this last night, not with cursing, but I lost my temper with my dog, of all things. You know, Louis, he loves to get under your feet. And I stepped all over him last night with a plate of food, dinner food in my hand.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, it's those times where what she calls a reflex.
Yeah.
That sometimes will let you know there's some stuff down in there that we still need to. I don't remember the last time I said a curse word, but I know just last night I lost my temper and it come out in those reflex moments. And it's like, you know, God and my wife let me know that there's still some stuff deep down in there I need to work on. But yeah, I mean, she hits the nail on the head here.
And we see this while we're out running a lot, right?
Yeah.
People who drive crazy and do some crazy stuff. I remember one time when I was at Georgia Tech, I was out for a run. And there's it's a fairly busy road and a lot of cars driving up and down this road. It's on a pretty steep hill. And there's a bunch of driveways that intersect this road.
Yeah.
And this girl came out of this driveway and I was running. Mm-hmm. And I think I was going downhill at the time. So I was running at a pretty good clip. Mm-hmm. And I mean, she pulled, I mean, like I had to really put the brakes on not to hit her. But as I slowed and went around the back of her car, I kind of banged on the back of her car a little bit, you know, and then I just kept running. I didn't say anything. That's all I did, right? Just to
let her know you were there.
Let her know I was there, and you know, I didn't really appreciate it so much. And I got down a little way, and this girl gets out of her car. She's about 5 feet tall,
ready to fight.
She gets out of her car and she tells me, "You ever touch my car again, I will kick your bleep." And I laughed at her. And let me just tell you, you probably shouldn't laugh at people when they do that kind of thing. But anyway, I remember that. That's one of those things I remember. And I got that banging on the trunk thing actually from my high school coach.
Really?
Yeah. I remember him doing that one time. And so, yeah, it was just a good way to say, not to be ugly, but just to say, hey,
I tell you, the crazy thing now, or the most dangerous thing I think out there now, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I'm trying to let everyone know about running on the road is not the people who are doing things intentionally. Because I think people that are trying to get close to you intentionally, it's a 99% chance they're not going to hit you. They're just trying to scare you. They're being jerks or whatever. The ones that are scary nowadays, you know, the road in front of my house is Lake Francis Road. Yeah. It's like a racetrack.
Yep.
And I get out there and I run and walk, you know, but it's got a wide shoulder. I can get off. The ones that are scary are 4:30 when the high school is pouring out, or 3:30 when the high school's pouring out. Dean, I've had people run completely off the road. I had to get down in the ditch. They never knew I was there.
Yeah.
Their phone is up in front of their face.
Yep.
And those are the ones that are scary.
Yeah.
The people just acting like idiots. Yeah, it's scary. It can scare you, but they see you. And there's a little comfort there. The ones that are, and you can see them coming from a long way. I always told my boys, our whole triathlon team growing up, make eye contact with the driver.
Yep.
And you can make eye contact 100 yards away or 50 yards away. You can see their eyes. Yeah. And if they're not making eye contact with you, get out of the way.
Yeah.
Because they don't see you.
Assume that they don't see you.
They don't see you.
Yeah.
Because chances are their eyes are down at the radio or their phone or whatever. Putting eyeliner on, I've dealt with that before. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on.
What's really scary too is when you're running on a road and there's like a ditch next to you that's really deep and really dangerous to jump down into.
Yeah.
And those people like that, it can be scary. 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. This is why we should behave ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We are supposed to be holy, and we should be recognized that way, right? Mm-hmm. And if we live up to this verse, just like she says, if we live up to this, people are going to notice. They're going to recognize that we're different. Mm-hmm. And that's really important.
Yeah, and it begs the question, not what do you want to be known for? What are you known for?
Yeah.
And that's a tough question to wrestle with. Because sometimes we kid ourselves, but what is reality? And sometimes, I've talked about you need those friends in your life who will call you out.
Yeah.
Tell you when you're acting a fool. Mm-hmm. You need those people in your life. Because if you're just surrounding yourself with, the eternal optimist who, you can do no wrong, you need those people. Just yesterday, a friend of mine kind of called me out. Not on anything bad I was doing, but kind of, it was some stuff with work. And it was Travis.
Yeah.
And I was doing something, and it wasn't anything bad, but I didn't see an error that I was making. He's like, "Hey, look at this." I'm like,
"That's
right.
Good stuff.
You're right." Yeah. And so we need those people in our life. I never get upset with constructive criticism. It may hurt, but the people closest to me, if they're giving it to me, there's a reason. And so I've always said you got to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. And the second part is that you've got to listen to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have those people, if you're just not going to listen and you think they're being hateful. They're saying that for a reason, and they're saying it because they love you, and you need to fix this.
Yeah. 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 I can't believe you work with me because, I'm so reluctant to speak up.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not afraid to bust people's chops. Nor am I. I mean,
Well, I think it's good. I do. And I'm like you. I appreciate the criticism. And a matter of fact, I sent a message to somebody recently, a friend that I said, some of the stuff, I don't think it's coming across the way you think it is. And, just hope, again, not doing it for that reason, because I don't want him to be perceived that way, And so I like it when people do that for me.
Yeah.
Romans 7:18-19, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing.
So weird, some of these verses. We actually just talked about this verse last week in our nighttime stories. And this is crazy. I mean, it is that, I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I do want to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the biggest mysteries of life. I mean, it's not a mystery.
Yet we all understand
We
exactly,
all understand it
right?
completely. I mean, everybody can relate to that statement.
Yeah.
I don't want to eat that donut, yet I'm picking the donut up and I'm putting it in my mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
It's true. Yeah.
And it goes to every part of our life, and that's just the result of sin.
That's exactly it.
And and it's why it's so important to stay close to Christ, because you've heard me say the most comforting thing to me is conviction. Mm-hmm. I want it to be swift, and I want it to be clear. We have to be close to God for it to do that. And that sounds weird to say, I want swift and clear and conviction. But that's the training part, right? I mean, that's what's keeping us in check. It's what's keeping us between the guardrails. And when you start to get away from Christ, that's when it's less swift and it's less clear. And before you know it, you're down here where you can barely feel it and you can barely hear it. And that's not where anybody wants to be, because think about what this verse says. I'm doing what I don't want to do, and I'm not doing what I am wanting to do. Well, the answer to that is move back up here closer to Christ. Daily reading, talking to Him. I mean, we talk to God. How do you hear from God? You read His Word. Well, you have to do that daily.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me about this is that when something comes out of you like this, and Rhonda, I apologize if this hurts a little bit, but it's true, because I do this almost regularly. I hate to say, but when it comes out of you, the first thing we want to say is, "Oh, that's not me." But it is us.
Yeah, it is us. That's our sinful nature rearing its head.
Yep. And so, yeah.
But the great thing about this story is she recognized it immediately.
Because she got that conviction you're just talking about.
Yeah.
Yep. 1 Peter 1:15 and 16. But as He who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy.
This is one of those verses we don't like to talk about. Because, and it's why this verse is why you really should never make the statement, "Oh, I'm just a sinner saved by grace." That is true, but that is letting yourself off the hook.
It's true.
And we shouldn't say, I'm just trying the best I can. God said, "You shall be holy, for I am holy," which indicates it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
We just have a choice to make. And this, I love how in Peter, there is no wiggle room here.
Yeah.
There is no wiggle. It's a commandment. You shall be holy. That's a pretty high bar.
That is. Yeah, it is. Well, let me ask you this, though, because, it's famous in the Bible. Jesus called people a brood of vipers, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fit in? Because that we call it righteous indignation, right? Is there a point in time where it's okay for us to lash out? Is there a time when because obviously that's holy, God is holy, what He did, at that point. So how do we reconcile that, you think?
Righteous indignation to me is a very different thing than me losing my temper. Righteous indignation is us getting upset about the things that are against God.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually not why we're upset. We're upset because something's been done that's against us.
That's right.
And righteous indignation, if it results in us cursing, losing our temper, retaliation, if it results in any of those things, then it's not in the righteous indignation category. It's in the self. You've offended me.
Yeah.
And we like to pull that phrase into what's going on with us right at that point to excuse what we're doing. And very, very, very rarely is that the case.
And here's what Paul said about it in Romans, in the 12th chapter. He said, "Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." It's exactly what she's saying, right?
Yeah.
It's what she said in her story. And this is, in this season where, we have all these politics going on. It's really a popular thing to demonize people who are on the other side of whatever it is you think. And we have to be careful with that because it's not right. It's just not. No,
and do not take revenge. Okay, that's a pretty short statement.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, if what we're doing results in revenge, then that's not righteous. That's not righteousness. It may be self-righteousness, but it's not righteous indignation. It's not doing something on behalf of God, because when somebody offends you and you go after them and attack them and seeking revenge, God wants no part of that. God, don't put my name on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny that I was walking with a gentleman last week and we were talking about this. You know, I have gotten upset with somebody because of where they're walking. A Christian friend of mine who is just their walk isn't where it should be. They're doing things that they shouldn't be. And it really gets me upset for that person. And I've even prayed the prayer, God, make their life miserable so that they'll come back to you.
Yeah.
And that sounds harsh. And, you know, I've debated people close to me on that prayer, you know. And to me, that is what we are to do. We're to take it to God. Mm-hmm. God, do with this, leave room for God's wrath. You know, if we're taking wrath into our own hands, we're not leaving room for God's wrath.
That's right.
Take it to God. God will do what he needs to. Many times to bring somebody back to Christ, it does take something
harsh
that's uncomfortable for that person.
Yeah.
And my opinion is it's okay to pray that prayer, because my heart is, God, I want them back close. I want their walk to be where it should be for their sake.
Yeah.
Not for anything I'm doing, but for their sake.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good way to put it. Question. Have you ever had one of those, did I really just say that moments? I wish I could say no, but we probably all had it, right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this has been the source probably of the toughest things that I've had to face in my life are probably due to this.
Mm-hmm.
Are probably due to the things that I said that I shouldn't have said. And I've talked about this on this podcast before, but I'll repeat it because it's been a while. But the time that I was out running near my house, I was about 4 miles from my house, and I was running down the road, and these two dogs came out, and they were almost attacking me, and they were kind of ganging up, and you know how dogs are, they'll feed off of one another, and they're barking, and there were people that were standing basically on the side of the road talking, and none of them
it was their dogs.
Apparently, I don't know. It's hard to say, but it looked like it was their. At least one of them was their dogs. But they're not saying anything. And so I lashed out and I said, will you please get your dogs off of, and I hollered at them. Mm-hmm. And I think they called them, got them all, and I went back to my run. And I got quarter mile, half mile down the road, and I was like, that was not the way to handle things. And
so God was within a quarter mile of you.
Yeah.
Which is pretty close.
Yeah. And so I turned back around and I went back through there, and I was so happy they were still out there in the yard. And I said, listen, I apologize for the way I said that. I said, sometimes dogs can be really scary when you're running. Mm-hmm. But I should not have said what I said. And there were kids out there, so it made it worse. And anyway, but that was because I was convicted that I had done, and I had let something out that I should not have let out. Now, was it okay for me to say, hey, can somebody call these dogs off? Sure. But it was the way that I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you took a bad thing and turned it into a good.
Well,
I mean, that had to make an impression on them, whether they said it or not.
Yep.
Because you don't ever see that. I've never had one person yell at me on the road, turn around and come back and say, hey, I really shouldn't have said that. I've never had that happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
you were being different in that moment for sure.
and hopefully it had an impact. Next question. Can you relate to Paul's statement in Romans 7:18 and 19? Of course, I already said that I did, but I can add this. It's weird. We were just talking about it, but it's weird how I was trying to think of what does it feel like. But when something wants to come out of you that shouldn't come out of you, it's almost like holding on to like a really strong dog on a leash. Mm-hmm. And it catches you off guard and you're off balance and that dog takes off and yanks you over. That's what it feels like mm-hmm. when you want to say something and you shouldn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, sin is addictive. It's kind of like sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, I said it a while ago, when, I don't know if you've ever, because I can remember times in the past, I used to eat a Reese peanut butter cup every night.
Yeah.
With a glass of milk.
Yeah.
Well, that's not horrible. But I did it every night. And there came a point where I thought, I need to quit this. It was like crack withdrawals for the first week.
Yeah.
Every night, 7:30, 8 o'clock, I had done that. And it was like, I'm not kidding, Dean. It was every bit I used to smoke. It was every bit. Now, it didn't drag on for as long as quitting smoking did, but for that first week or so, not eating that one Reese cup every night with a glass of milk, it was hard to break. I didn't want to eat that, but yet everything in my body and my spirit was saying, you just need, it's not that big of a deal. Go get it.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happens inside of us between our sinful nature and a holy God.
Yeah.
That same battle goes on inside of us. And it's just, I mean, I was joking. You were within a quarter of a mile of God but that's a good illustration to look at.
Yeah.
When we get away from that, then that sin wins that battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying eating a Reese's is a sin. It is not, because I still love Reese's. But it was for that illustration.
It's a good example. It's a great illustration.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Last question. In addition to Jesus, can you identify someone who is a good role model for you? Someone who truly lives out 1 Peter 1:15 and 16. If so, spend some time with them so you can learn from them. Gosh, this question hit me so hard because that person for me, him, John Bagley. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's impressed me so much because it didn't matter if somebody was lashing out. It didn't matter. He loved everybody, and he was so good at taking everything and turning it in that direction. Unfortunately, he's in a nursing home now. He's got dementia.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know he's in a nursing home,
and he's in pretty bad shape now. Yeah. I saw a photo of him just looking hopeless, and it was it hurt so bad. But you know who I don't know if I'd call her a role model, but the person who helps me through all that is my wife, Debbie. She just...
I would say she's in the role model category.
I mean, she can have a temper too.
Yeah.
And people don't know that about her, but she can.
Her and Holly have the same temperament.
Yeah. But her buttons that get pushed, they're in a whole different place than mine.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Because there are times when I see her get worked up about stuff that I'm calm about because that's not my button.
Yeah.
But I've got a lot more buttons than she does.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I've got tons of buttons. She's got like one or two.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's really, really good at just pulling me back from those things. And she doesn't mind, just like we were talking about a little while ago, just being frank and saying, you shouldn't go there. And man, I'm so appreciative of that.
I think the people for me, and there's a few, but if I had to, what is the common thing that ties them together? I think it's this. When I go to these, there's a handful of them. When I go to these people and I need to vent about something, they don't say anything. It's wisdom.
Yeah.
you go to some people and it's like, yeah, and it's like they're agging you on.
You're
And
talking about me now.
no. I've got some people in my mind who, if I want somebody to get on my side, I go to these people.
Yeah.
If I need to, because you won't get on my side. You won't get on my side just to get on my side. You'll go against me if that's what I need.
Well,
but there's 2 or 3 people that, I mean, they don't have to say. It's like they just listen.
yeah. But
They
you
just
can see
listen.
it in their eyes.
Like you can read their body language, and you're like, oh, I'm an idiot,
yeah.
And that's all it takes.
How awesome
They
are
can
those
bring you
people?
down without ever saying a word, and that every one of them are much, much older than me.
Yeah.
And it's just years and years of wisdom and learning when to talk and when not to talk. And I mean, reality, that's 80% of the battle, right?
Yeah.
When to say something and when not to say something.
It's true.
And
Good point.
I can't wait till, if I don't want to get older, but I can't wait to get to that age just for that reason alone to be able to do that, because I'm learning. But man, it's a tough thing to learn.
It is.
Do you need something to keep you motivated and to keep fit both physically and spiritually? Upward Sports Run for God Run Club has just what you need to keep you on track for both. Check out runforgod.com and join us today for pennies a day. You won't regret it.
Well, how about this question? Do you build muscle when you run endurance runs, long distances? And I saw this, and I thought this was really interesting. We know that when you weight lift, you challenge the amount of work your muscles can do, and you tear them down, and they build back stronger and bigger. That's how you get it. But is running something that does that? Does it build your muscles back bigger, or does it not? And I thought it's a good question. And I can't remember where I got this information from, but it's really interesting. It talks about there's certain hormones, testosterone, human growth hormone, and insulin growth factor that play a role in muscle growth and repair. And then it poses this question: do males and females grow muscle differently? And this was talking about the genetics of and of course, we know that testosterone is part of what helps build muscle. And so, yes, males have an advantage to build muscle over females. But this was interesting because it talked about the type of body, and that there are 3 different types of body, and that are more important perhaps even than gender. And these are the 3 different types of bodies. So there's a mesomorphic body, and it says people with this body type tend to be muscular and generally build muscle mass far more quickly than people with other body types. We all know that person who maybe they don't even work out much, but they're muscular.
Yeah.
Right. And then ectomorphic. This term describes a slim or straight frame. Ectomorphs have a lower chance of building muscle mass, but can increase their strength through resistance training. That's me. And then there's an endomorphic, which is this body type is more rounded or curvy. People with an endomorphic body can build muscle most effectively through strength training. And so each one of those types of bodies builds muscle in a whole different way. I thought that was, and of course, some of those traits are more pronounced in males and support faster muscle growth. But it also says these include a larger muscle mass, higher testosterone, and tighter joints. Have you ever heard that phrase, tighter joints? Male joints are tight, which I guess makes sense because women are more flexible than men. And that must be why their joints are looser. And I thought that was really interesting. But
So when you say tighter joints, are you referring to the tendons?
I assume that's what it's
allow
saying.
those levers to action.
Yeah. And that makes sense. If those are tighter,
Right.
then it would be easier to get the resistance you need to build the muscle, right? So it says that if you want to be able to increase muscle, there's 3 things about the exercise that you have. It has to be consistent. We heard that before. It needs to be challenging. We heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be long-term. So it should be something that you do for a long time. And people also achieve the best results when they follow exercise with enough rest. We've talked about that. But it does say that it finally came down to regular cardio can support muscle growth and function. So cardio, running, walking, doesn't necessarily build muscle, but it facilitates your body being able to build muscle. And so if you do some running and some weight training, then you build muscle better doing that weight training if you're a runner versus not a runner. I thought that
kind of makes sense. I've been reading a little bit about, because I'm intrigued about it, because you're saying it's getting to be a thing, this rucking.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's the whole concept behind it. You're getting the strength training. You're putting the challenging. You're putting the weight onto the
onto your joints and muscles and tendons.
Yeah, and at the same time you're doing the endurance sport. I don't know. That makes a lot of sense. So basically, running opens the door for a more effective weight or muscle building opportunity.
That's the contention. Yeah. So
it's interesting.
It also, of course, it talks about eating a balanced, healthful diet is also a key to all of that, and we all know that. It says guidelines recommend that adult males and females consume 56 grams and 46 grams, respectively, of protein every day. So protein is really important in muscle building. And of course, we all know the sources of protein, and so it's important to get your protein.
So it's funny you bring this up. So I watched a documentary. I'm not going to say the name of the documentary because it's got agendas and it's got some language, and but it was interesting. It was, and you can probably go find it by me the way I'm talking about it. But it was a documentary done on, I think it was 30 identical twins.
Huh.
And so, I mean, if you think about it, that's a pretty good test case if you're trying this or that using identical twins.
Yeah.
And so the whole premise of it was we're going to have one go vegan and one stay omnivore, which is meat and a balanced diet.
Yeah.
The documentary was an anti-meat campaign. I mean, that's all it was. It was just anti-meat. But what it showed is they went through, I forget how many weeks it was. They did all the testing, all the measurements, all the blood tests, urine tests, stool samples. They tested everything before they started. And then they put one twin on vegan, one twin on omnivore. And at the end, what the results showed is the vegan lost more weight, but the vegan also lost more muscle than the omnivore. The omnivore lost less weight, but got a better body composition. More, it was a better, what am I looking for? The fat that...
Your body fat?
Body mass index.
Okay.
The one on the meat had a better body mass index, and what it highlighted is they didn't really give them much to go on other than you're vegan, and what it showed was the education part of if you're going to go vegan, you have to get protein in, and it's extremely hard if you don't know what you're doing to get enough protein in to continually build the muscle that your body needs. And so a lot of people, they do this and they lose all this weight, but you look at their arms and everything and there's no muscle there. And so if you're going to, and it was interesting that they fessed up to this because it was an anti-meat, documentary. I don't know. It was
I'd like to watch that one.
Yeah. Sure. It's several episodes long.
That's pretty cool. I did watch that other documentary that you talked about recently though.
Which one?
Fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched that. That was interesting to watch. So
we've watched several of those lately. And what I've learned, we have watched all the way from this documentary that I'm talking about, which was vegan, you're not a human being if you're not vegan, all the way to keto and fruits and vegetables are the enemy. They're both wrong. The answer is in the middle.
Moderation.
Moderation is the answer. Yeah.
And stay away from they
Sugar.
all tell you sugar's bad.
Sugar,
all of them say,
yeah.
Processed sugar's bad.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I thought about this whole muscle building thing and all? I saw this. Do you watch American Ninja Warrior?
I have in the past, yeah.
They just finished up this season.
Yeah.
And the same guy won it this year that won it last year. And one of the things I noticed about him is that during some of those extra segments that they have, that they intersperse in there, this guy runs a little bit. Mm-hmm. Well, I've never seen any of those ninjas run.
They're usually rock climbers and all that kind of stuff.
And, well, this guy's not necessarily, he's not a runner, but as part of his training, he does run. And I don't know how many of the others run, but I did notice that this guy did. And I thought that was, it's best to do both. It is best to do strength training and running.
Yeah.
If you want to be in the best shape, I just think.
Isaac,
doesn't have to be running.
Is it Isaac Calderon, the guy that won it?
Yeah.
He works at High Point in Chattanooga.
Yeah. He was the first one to win the $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, this guy that won it this year now has $2 million. He's won it twice. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Now, how do you treat a rental car compared to your own car? On second thought, don't answer that. This is called Our Body is Not a Rental Car. After a run on a muddy trail, I'll usually change my shoes before I get into my truck and keep from spreading it around the interior. In the summer, I use a runs done cover over the seat to keep the sweat off my seat. I'll drive through the car wash once a week to keep it clean on the outside. Why do I do all these things? Because I want to take care of my truck. Now, what if the vehicle I was driving was a rental car? Would I change shoes, cover the seat, or drive through a car wash? Well, you know the answer to that. Why do I treat them differently? Well, one of them is mine, and I'm invested in it. I care about how long it's going to last. I like to take care of the things that are mine, especially new things. A rental car is not mine. Now, I do go out of my way to take care of the things I borrow from a friend, even though those things are not mine. Why? Because I care about my friends, and I appreciate that they let me borrow things. A few weeks ago, I borrowed a lawnmower from my next-door neighbor, and I returned it much cleaner than it was when I borrowed it. I am invested in the relationship between my neighbor and I. But a rental car feels different. I guess it's because you're paying for the privilege of borrowing it, maybe? I'm not sure why we seem to care so much less about a rental car, but we do. So what's my point? My point is that we often treat our bodies like they are rental vehicles rather than our own. This just doesn't make sense to me. So I thought about it, and this is what I think might be happening. Have you ever had something that doesn't work properly and is the source of much frustration because you spend as much time fixing problems as you do using that thing? For me, it was my lawnmower. For you, it may be a computer, a watch, or maybe even your car. You're so tired of the problems that you just don't feel like taking care of it. So you act like a child and do what you know on the inside you shouldn't do. You treat it like a rental. That's what we do with our bodies. We treat them like they're a rental because we're simply not satisfied with the way it has performed over the years. But let's go back to my lawnmower one more time. You see, I treated that lawnmower poorly because I had a lot of trouble with it. But one day, I decided to take better care of it. I replaced some worn parts, cleaned it every time I used it, and generally took better care of it. And I bet you're thinking that I'm going to tell you that it suddenly became reliable. But it didn't. But you know what did change? My attitude towards my lawnmower. I appreciated it much more than I ever had, and after taking good care of it, it's worth more money today than it was when I bought it years ago. Is it perfect? Far from it. But it gets the job done, and I'm not frustrated all the time. You may not find taking care of your body results in Vogue or Men's Health cover shoots, but you will appreciate that you have a lot. You will appreciate what you have a lot more. And let's face it, that body you don't care about is what God gave you. For that fact alone, we should take care of our bodies. The Bible actually tells us that we should. It calls our body a temple. Whether we want to admit it or not, we are invested in our bodies. And being disgusted with what we see in the mirror is not a good way to treat them. God gave each of us things to take care of. I have a terrible memory. It's the source of much frustration for me, but I came to the realization a few years ago that God made me that way. I can be frustrated with it, or I can choose to realize that because my memory is so poor, I don't tend to hold anything against people around me because I can't remember what happened. I'm only half kidding here. I have come to realize that a poor memory can be a blessing at times. And we need to realize that even if we don't like what we see in the mirror, there is a reason to appreciate it because God gave it to us. It really is that simple. Now, you may look at your body like it's a rental car or an old lawnmower, but I challenge you to change. The more you take care of your body, the more you will appreciate it. But more importantly, you'll be heeding God's advice. And in the end, I promise you, you will appreciate yourself for who God made you to be.
It's a great story, Dean. But I take exception. I have been guilty of washing a rental car before.
Have you? It figures.
I actually borrowed, talking about borrowing things, I have a landscaper friend of mine, and I was going to aerate my yard a few weeks ago, and I borrowed both of his big industrial aerators so me and the boys could get out and aerate. And when I got them, I mean, this oil was blacker than tar, and he had never changed. It looked like he had never changed the oil, greased the fittings. They were completely dirty. Well, I changed the oil, the spark plugs, cleaned them up, and when I brought them back, he's like, "Man, you can borrow whatever you want, whenever you want it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Thanks, yeah. I'll do that." Yeah. It's good to have a landscaper friend.
Yeah, it is. That's good. Good stuff.
So, did we say on here, or did you just tell me? No more lawnmower stories. I mean, did you say that on the podcast yet? Have you told the world that?
Yeah, last week.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you just told me or if you said it on the podcast.
Yeah, we said, I got a new. Well, I say there's not going to be. I mean, you don't know. I mean, the lawnmower is not brand new. It's like new.
Right.
But so we'll see. I do have a new lawnmower though, so maybe we won't have any lawnmower stories going forward. Maybe this is the last one. We'll see.
Yeah, I doubt it. I think that's God's thorn in your flesh, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. But anyway, when we're unhappy about our fitness level, we tend to not care so much, right? It's like, well, why should I even do anything? I'm too far gone.
Yeah, and I think that is also can be a good place.
Can be. We can get to that disgusted.
You get to that I've had it. You're doing the Dave Ramsey thing right now. You hear what he says. You can't change until you get to I've had it. You know, you always hear about alcoholics and drug dealers. They have to hit rock bottom before they've had that I had it moment. So if you're there, consider it an opportunity to say, I've had it. I'll never live like this again, and make a change.
That's a good point. It's a great point. Yeah, I guess the hardest part is determining what to do a lot of times in all these gray areas. And I say what I mean by that is, for example, you're watching all these documentaries on food. Should you eat organic food or not? I'm not clear on it.
Yeah.
Right. There's been several this Casey and Callie memes.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen them. I've seen them a few times in a few different areas. And they're sounding the alarm on all of this different stuff. But even they don't do everything that they say we should do. Right. And so you realize that some of it's really important and some of it's not so important. And it's really hard to tell these days what's really important and what's not really important.
I think the secret to nutrition, the secret to fitness, the secret to your finances, the secret to your health, the secret to your the secret to everything is thought. Where we start going off the rails is when we just don't think about things. We don't even think about what we're going to eat for that day, and we just grab whatever's convenient. We don't think about God during the day. Anything that you think about critically or not critically.
Yeah, critically is a good.
When you think about, I've told you about a nutritionist. It's the guy that did the metabolic efficiency book that I've told you about. Mm-hmm. He's coached a lot of athletes through the years, and he is a nutritionist. He's written books on nutrition, but you know how he does nutrition with his athletes? They have to send him a picture of whatever they're about to eat.
I love that.
That's the only thing he does for nutrition, and he says that forces them to think about what I'm about to eat. Hey, Bob is going to see this double-decker chocolate cake I'm about to eat. Now, does that mean you shouldn't eat it? No. There's nothing wrong with eating a piece of chocolate cake, but are you giving it thought? And are you thinking about what it's going to do to that run tomorrow, or how I'm not going to sleep tonight because I ate double-decker chocolate cake? Or when you think about all those things, and you filter it through those filters, and then you say, yes, I'm going to have that piece of chocolate cake, or I'm going to have that Reese, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But where we get into trouble is we don't think about it. We think God's not going to see this. God's going to see it.
Yeah.
So if you think about WWJD, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
That was a great campaign for years and years, and I still see people with those bracelets on.
Yep.
If you run it through those filters and you actually give it thought, 90% of the time you're going to do the right thing.
That's a good point. Well, here's the bottom line to me. One of the things that we have a problem with is I got this example. I've found this device that I can use to stretch my abdominals that's really made a difference for me right now, right? And I know that I need to spend, it's 5 minutes. It's not a big deal. 5 minutes a day on this thing makes a huge difference. And yet there's still days I don't do it. And so I think we have to make sure we do the things too that we know they're going to help us, right? Yeah. So here's 2 questions to ask yourself. What things am I doing that I know harms me? Try to do better, try to improve, not do that as much. And then what are the things that I know would be good for me, and do those things and do them regularly. And if you can just ask those 2 questions honestly, you'll be better off.
Yeah. There's a great book. What you just said made me think about it. I don't know I think you have read it, Atomic Habits. You read it?
Yeah.
It's all about the psychology of what we commit to habit and what we don't commit to habit.
Yeah.
So it's a great book on that very subject. But yeah, I know we oversimplify things sometimes, but in this area we overcomplicate things.
Yeah, we do.
Good way to put it. It's really, most things are pretty elementary. It's do you have the motivation? Do you have people motivated? Do you have those people in your corner that are going to hold you accountable? And are you creating good habits for yourself? That's the majority of the battle right there.
That's it.
Have you always wanted to read through the entire Bible but never found the time to do it? Well, let me do it for you. Sign up for the self-paced Bible in a Year Challenge and start listening today. Every day, I read a few chapters of the Bible and give you running or walking tips and encouraging quotes. You must be a Run Club member for access to this exciting challenge. So, if you're not a member, sign up today and get started. If you are a member, what are you waiting for?
Every week I share a reason why running and or walking are so awesome. You know, there's no better way to improve the condition of your lungs than to run. The American Lung Association says that we should get 30 minutes of moderate physical activity 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be something organized, but there's no more efficient way of doing it than doing some aerobic activity like running or walking. So lung health is probably one of the best sports we can do. There are others that are really good for you, but running is really an efficient way to really take good care of your lungs. And so I'm really sensitive to lung issues, not me personally, but because Debbie has serious lung issues. Sure. It makes me want to take care of my lungs more because I see that potential, right?
Yeah.
Well, they had another 1,500 meters this past weekend. They had the Diamond League final. Back down to And then Josh Kerr wasn't in this one, but they had Hawker and Nagoose. You know, Hawker won the Olympics. Then Nagoose won one of the Diamond League races. And so who do you think won this one? Well, Ingebrigtsen won this one. So in the Diamond League final, Ingebrigtsen finally won one of the 1500s against the major competition. So anyway, it was a great year for the 1500 this year. It was a great year for the 800 meter guys this year. I don't remember the exact stats, but I do remember something like half of the fastest times in history, like in the top 10, they were all run this year.
Really?
Yeah, like it was a crazy good year for the 800 meters.
Now, I just knew you were going to have it on here, but I don't see it. What? Did Lane tell me that Ingebrigtsen just ran a half marathon?
He did.
And
he crashed and burned.
Crashed and burned. And started, it sounded like good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, he went out too fast is what he did. He went through the 10K in like 27:20.
Yeah, that's what Lane told me. And then he wound up running like 104 or 5.6, something like that.
Yeah, he wound up jogging for a little while actually. and then finished. Yeah, he's got a lot more appreciation for the half marathoners these days.
Wow.
I forgot about that. Have you ever heard of the site Marathon Investigations? You ever looked at that at all?
No.
Well, I don't have any idea how legitimate all this stuff is, but there's a guy out there, and what the guy does is he investigates cheaters or potential cheaters, and he tries to find these people who are cheating, and he kind of publicly shames them if they've cheated. And he gets controversial sometimes. Most recently, there was an editor from a popular running magazine that he has basically shamed, saying that they cheated, and of course, that person denies that. But anyway, there's this site, and it made me start thinking. He said, according to the site, 7 people were disqualified from the Chicago Marathon, and it says there were likely 40 more people who cut the course. And all that may be true. But here's the reason why I bring this up, because I wonder how many of these people didn't mean to do it. Mm-hmm. So think about it. You're in the Chicago Marathon, and you're struggling really, really bad. And at some point in time, the Chicago Marathon is kind of one of those long courses where it goes out and then it goes on a different street on the way back, but it's parallel. Mm-hmm. And how easy would it be to cut it short because you just feel terrible and you feel like you can't make it the full marathon, and so you cut the marathon short. And I thought, there's probably a lot of people who honestly do this, but they don't mean to cheat. They're not saying they cheated. They don't want any awards. They're not looking for awards. They just do it.
They just cut the course short.
They just, and they do it not for any other reason. So I can totally see this happening and it being completely innocent. So here's what I wanted to say about it. If you find yourself in that situation, here's what I suggest you do. I suggest that you stop before the finish line, find a race official, and ask them what to do. If they tell you to go ahead and run through the finish line, then go ahead and run through the finish line. But otherwise, just let somebody know what you're doing, because you don't want to, and I realize that a lot of people are like, well, I paid for this race and I want my medal. And so that's a lot of times, I think that's probably what drives people across that finish line is just wanting their medal. And I remember this happening to me. There was it was a half Ironman in Austin, Texas. And I was having trouble. I was having an injury issue with my running, and I thought about stopping. And I thought, I really want the medal, though. Do I go through the finish line or not? And I was battling with myself. Should I or shouldn't I? So I can see why people would fall on the side of go ahead and go through the finish line. So anyway, I say all that. It's sort of like how a military veteran, if you ever
stolen valor.
Yeah, if you tell a military guy, well, you won the Purple Heart, and they didn't win the Purple Heart, they're going to be quick to say, oh no. I did not win. I am not a Purple Heart winner. They're not going to do that, right? That's kind of how we should do. That's why we should think about.
Yeah,
races.
I don't know how I feel about this guy, because I know there are people that they do the same thing, but it's for stolen valor.
Yeah,
like there was a guy in our community here. He was a pretty high-ranking guy in our town, and I mean, I knew the guy personally, and forever he was a Navy SEAL. Come to find out, he wasn't a Navy SEAL. And it was a person like this who they travel the country finding people who are saying, and it was just about Navy SEALs. That's all he does. I can see that, but for race cheating, I don't know. Does the guy just not have something better to do?
I think he just hates to see people getting credit for something they didn't do.
I get it. And he's got an axe to grind probably for some reason.
Yeah. And it diminishes the people that do it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't know about the people who are further back in the pack. Now, if it's you know, at the top of a race, then I say go for it.
Chances are those people, especially nowadays, you're not going to get away with that.
No.
With all the time and mats and everything.
It's a lot harder now.
But
anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thing. So after that, I can't help but ask this question that I'm sure I've probably asked before, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. There was a woman who cheated in the Boston Marathon back in 1980. What was her name?
I don't remember her name, but I remember what she did.
Yeah.
How do you get away with that?
Yeah. I mean, she's like, you know, when people toss out a name every time, when you hear about somebody cutting a course, this name pops out of people's mouth still today.
Yeah.
If you know the answer to that, send it to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first member to answer that question correctly, you will win $20 off in the Run for God store. And let me leave you with this motivational thought of the week. It comes from Vincent van Gogh. He said, great things are done by a series of small things brought together.
So true.
Yeah. It's one step at a time. It's one stretching session. It's one foam rolling session. Mm-hmm. It's staying hydrated. It's doing all the things, right? Sure. As we've always said. So, yeah. Good thought from Vincent van Gogh. He knew that way back then. So, all right. That is 236 podcasts we've done. Don't forget, call Mitchell. Send Mitchell an email.
Customer service @runforgod.com. And let me know that you're thinking about it, you want to talk about it, and we'll get on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And we'll talk it out.
Yep.
I'll answer all your questions and twist your arm and get you to join us in January.
He'll get you excited about it. I'm just telling you. I just know it. So don't hesitate. Do that. And until next week, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.